Morning and welcome to the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission meeting, 14th of March, starting here at approximately 10:10. Call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioners Brown,
Present.
Gillette,
Present.
Gapel,
Present.
Pickens,
Present.
Smith,
Present.
Vice Chairman Fuller,
Present.
Chairman Vieira.
Present. And,
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'd like to take a quick moment to just welcome two of our newest commissioners, Cherie Pickens and Lee Smith. Welcome, and glad to have you here, and look forward to working with you over this next year or two. So again, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, invocation. I'd like to ask if Concepcion Harris, one of our prior commissioners, could please lead us.
Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning with the Criminal Justice Commission, and we just ask that you would give them wisdom, direction, guidance, and discernment as they go through the proceedings. And we ask this in your Son's precious name. Amen.
If you could please remain standing, face the flag, and repeat with me the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, our first presentation is to two of our outgoing criminal justice commissioners, and if I could ask Mr. Bozigian if you could join me out in the front here. We'd like to take a moment to recognize and show a token of appreciation for two of our outgoing commissioners, and I'll start off with Concepcion Harris. If you could come on up, Concepcion. And what we have is a beautiful plaque from the city of Lancaster. It's inscribed, Concepcion Harris, in recognition and appreciation of your dedication and service to the citizens, staff, and Criminal Justice Commission of the city of Lancaster, January 2010, February 2012, and our arms aren't getting long enough here. So a big thank you. And I've got to say also, in addition to that, Concepcion has been such an asset and integral with the Neighborhood Impact Program here in the city of Lancaster with all that you've done. So thank you so much, and we sure appreciate everything.
Oh, thank you.
In terms of Concepcion, I think a lot of times people are tempted to believe that a person's contributions is based on how much they hear about them or read about them in the paper, see them in the media, and that's not true. There are few people in Lancaster or the Antelope Valley that have changed Lancaster for the good. There are very few that have changed it more than Concepcion. So she deserves a round of applause for daily making this a better place. Okay, yeah. No, go ahead.
Dennis Greer, if you can come on up here as well. Dennis is another outgoing commissioner for the city of Lancaster, and I've known Dennis since probably junior high, something like that, and quite a while. But again, Dennis just been such an asset on here. His background and expertise and all the things that we do here at with the CJC, and again, inscribed the same, but again, an appreciation for all that you do, Dennis. And I know also beyond just this, Dennis was a real backup and supporter. I think when we had the Not in Our Town bullying project as well, he was very instrumental in supporting that. So thank you for all you do, Dennis.
Thank you very much.
I didn't realize you knew David since junior high.
About 100 years.
The mayor also knew David way back when and told quite an embarrassing story about him at the last event. So, so we want to hear stories too later. Anyway, Dennis is cut from the same cloth as Concepcion. This is a person who has been with this community for a long time, contributed greatly, and again, it's not some person that you always read about or see in front, but it's a person who makes this community better daily, and it's a privilege to have worked with you on this and to continue to work with you. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Now we have a presentation from Antelope Valley Family Safety and Justice Center, Project Coordinator Diane Grooms.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm pleased to be here. I visited you a few months ago to tell you a little bit about the Antelope Valley concept for a family justice center, and I'm back here wearing my many hats as an elected member of the Lancaster School District, as an employee at Valley Oasis, and consulting with the Children's Center, and happily working on a project for the last 2 years, which is to create a family safety and justice center. We have in our leadership Virginia Arcos. Virginia is here today. Who was introduced to the concept of a family justice center about 2 years ago. She introduced this again to leadership, including Carol Crabson, who is the executive director of Valley Oasis, John Whitaker, who is with Children's Bureau, recently retired, and other leadership in our community to bring together the concept of a family justice center to the Antelope Valley. We have a unique valley. Our geography itself keeps people from accessing services and finding ways that they can escape domestic violence and prevent child abuse. And the Family Justice Center model seems to fit our valley extremely well. We've developed a steering committee. We have a lot of leadership in the community throughout Lancaster and Palmdale, and we would now like to formalize that process. We've attended training at the National Family Justice Center Alliance in San Diego, and we have now, we are very proud to say, identified the first building. The Children's Center, Sue Page is here with the Children's Center, the Board of Directors has agreed that this is an ideal program that meshes with the programs that they are already providing families and children, and that they have the space available for us to start this center. The unique thing about a Family Justice Center is we don't have to create a new service. We already have the services in place with the Sheriff's Department, District Attorney's Office, Neighborhood Legal Services, and our nonprofit sector that we can co-locate in one location. Now, the steering committee has made an assessment of the unique geography of the Antelope Valley, and we really do feel to do a proper job for victims, we need to have 2 centers, one in Lancaster and one in Palmdale. Our goal is first to open the one in Lancaster and then get a second center going in Palmdale, but to have one steering committee rather than duplicate the effort of that fundraising portion that needs to take place. It'll cost us about $25,000 to conduct a strategic plan to bring all of the community members together, and that is using the National Alliance to do that training. They have done this in 70 other communities. The nearest Family Justice Center to our area is in Van Nuys. I have visited them. I have visited San Diego. And in Van Nuys, they are serving both the San Fernando and Santa Clarita valleys. They have about 6 family members who will walk in every day seeking restraining orders, help to get out from under the violence within their household, and often that's the first time anyone has ever known that there's violence going on in their household. What the Family Justice Center tries to do is prevent the 911 call. If we can prevent the escalation of violence within a family, we then have the opportunity to prevent the more violent crimes that we're seeing on our top crime list. I don't know if you remember, to me it feels like yesterday, but there was a plume of black smoke going over a house in Quartz Hill just 4 years ago. And inside that house was a NASA engineer, and he and his wife were harboring a mother and 2 children. The ex-husband came along, used a machete, killed everyone, set fire to the house, and they have not seen another close friend of the family since that time. We had 4 deaths from that occurrence. It was simply a fire call. Somebody's house was burning down, and this is what they walked into. We don't know the kinds of issues that are happening in families until they report it to us. And 83% of our population will never go into a shelter. They'll never seek help because they don't know the process. A Family Justice Center locates things in one location. It's a place where a sheriff can do an interview in a safe center. It's a place where the district attorney can come in and build the case that needs to take place. It's a place where the family themselves can safely come, know that they are secure, and will be given the resources all in one location. The National Family Justice Center followed a woman once who needed help, and she went to 32 different locations before she actually was able to separate herself and her children from the batterer. It's a long process, and in this valley, with our transportation, it's a very difficult process. Knowing that there is a place and marketing it that there is a safe place where people can go, they can go anonymously. They don't have to really expose themselves to their batterer, and they can start getting the information that they need and the services they need to change things. And then the cost that is so immeasurable is the trauma that is experienced by the children as they witness one spouse beating up another. And we don't care whether it's a male spouse or a female spouse or a same-sex spouse. It's still violence. And our children, the cost to our children is extremely expensive. So what we would like to provide is safe access for both the deputy sheriffs and detectives, legal assistance for our victims, a safe place for families to seek the freedom of domestic violence before it escalates, and a way to link in our existing community services, such as our sexual assault response service, Valley Oasis, the emergency services that are there, our homeless services, because every one of these families, if they go to a shelter, are homeless immediately. We have a way to provide those services. We haven't made it easy for the victim, and that's the goal that we have in place. Your role as a Criminal Justice Commission is extremely important to us, and that is in providing the data that we need to measure ourselves, to provide the evaluation of the services, and also to provide us with the link that we need with the Sheriff's Department and the District Attorney. Wendy Tashiro with DCFS has been extremely involved in setting this process up and learning what we can do to link in county services. And we know that, as they have told us in San Diego, if you build it, they will come. Simply, we provide a building with some space, and people co-locate, and their buildings have filled up extremely rapidly with existing employees working at other locations, all coming together. Some communities have opened their Family Justice Center with 2 days a week. Others have gone to 5 days a week within the first month of opening. But what we are providing is a safe place for everyone, who, from the family all the way to the ones who are delivering the service. We would like to, now that we have a building, and we would like to have the endorsement of the City of Lancaster, the County of Los Angeles, and the City of Palmdale, so that we can now seek the funding we need. It costs us approximately $200,000 a year to provide all of the governance and oversight and the receptionist staff at these centers. The rest of it is basically a rent fee. Everything else is already provided in our existing services in the community. You're already doing the job, but we need to make it safer and better for the victim. I'm here today to ask questions, to ask who might like to be involved at the steering committee level for this on behalf of the city, and for your endorsement of this project. That's it.
Thank you, appreciate that. One question I did have, do you have a timeline that you're hoping to open up this building by? Or do
We
you
would
have a
like
date?
to open it within 3 months. Finding the building was the most difficult portion. We either had to find a chunk of money to start to find a building and prepare it, or we had to find a building that was prepared. The Children's Center building already has all of the safety protocols in place. It has interview rooms that are built to sheriff's specifications. We can record those interviews. We can provide a very safe place. And the Children's Center has a reputation for being the place to go for to help your children. So it's a very natural fit to co-locate in that location. Already they have existing crisis counselors that are prepared and funded by other grants that can be immediately available. And I know at the Family Service Center out at Edwards Air Force Base, they were extremely interested in this program because people will not seek support on base for their personnel, and yet that is one of the most difficult things that they have to deal with. So they were very excited to be able to co-locate at our location as well.
Is your funding, are you looking through grants or other types?
We'll be looking through grants. I believe that in San Diego, the police department actually operates the Justice Center, and they are the fiscal agent for it. It's not recommended that that process go in place by the National Center. They feel it really should be a community collaborative and something that we work on together. But once we have the formal structure in place and the endorsements of our major leadership, such as the city, then it's a lot easier for us to go out for grants. We have identified a fiscal agent so that we can raise money under a nonprofit umbrella. But having the pieces, putting the pieces together has been what we've been working on for a long time. I know the District Attorney's Office is extremely interested, and Virginia has been in conversation with them over the last 2 years as we've been putting this together. It's extremely intimidating to walk into a courthouse and ask for help at Neighborhood Legal Services. It's just not done. That's a place they don't feel safe as a first place to ask for help. When I first moved to California, there was a family resource center in every community. I don't know what happened to those. But the link of our neighborhood impact programs, the link of to be able to refer families to a place where they can safely disclose what is happening in their four walls is really a matter of safety for everyone who is helping them, as well as those people who are in that situation.
I know you made reference to the forensic services. Is that over at 80 Hospital that you referred to?
Correct. And our sexual assault response service in Valley Oasis links in with them. Valley Oasis was able to maintain that program for our community when they took over some of the state and grants on that. And it's an extremely valuable service, but it is best linked in with emergency health, acute health responders. It's not our plan to change that. It is our plan to help a victim know where she can get that assistance or bring the advocates over to where she is in a safe place.
Thank you.
Like I said, we have all the services here. Right. We just have to co-locate them. It would be great to have some financial support. But it doesn't need to be extremely high. It's an ability for us to do a better service. But we know the cost to prosecute a murderer in a domestic violence case is going to be over $1 million. We certainly feel that opening a center like this will make it safer and better for not only the victim but also their children.
Other comments, questions from any of the commissioners?
Yeah, I think it's an outstanding program. Certainly, it'd be difficult not to endorse the Antelope Valley Family Safety and Justice Center. I think that to say to the city or anybody else that we don't support a program that fights domestic violence and child abuse, we would be remiss at doing that.
Yes.
So a simple endorsement I certainly would support. I think if we're asking for something more specific that we would bring forth to the city of Lancaster, we should probably have something that we could consider in terms of
At this
specifics.
point, we need individuals that are selected by the city to be a member of the steering committee. And we need to go through a strategic planning process, which should take about 2 to 3 days. But we need to have at the table, and we need your assistance to get at the table, our law enforcement, the different organizations that you deal with here on this commission, to make sure that the right people are at the table. The Family Justice Center has recommended that we have a lieutenant or higher from the Sheriff's Department. Our District Attorney's Office, I know, is already very interested in this, but finding the right representation of people who have the authority to change a process is necessary for our steering committee. And that is what we need to identify before we can take that next big step.
Well, and I mean, I would certainly be willing to make a motion that we would suggest to the City Council that they take a look at or support the Antelope Valley Safety and Justice Center and consider appointing someone to their steering committee.
Will you be making this presentation to the City Council?
I'd be happy to. I'd like your introduction to them.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I didn't know if Virginia had anything to add at this point? I think you did a wonderful job. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Public business from the floor, agendized items. Citizens who would like to address the Criminal Justice Commission on any agendized item may do so when the item is being considered by the Commission. Please complete a speaker card and identify the agenda item you would like to discuss. And again, individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Consent calendar, approval of the minutes. Commissioners, did you get a chance to take a look at and review? And if so, could I have a motion to approve the minutes,
I
please?
move to approve the minutes.
Discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. Thank you. And again, you may not see a couple votes on the new commissioners. They weren't at that meeting, so we're unable to vote on that. That's the reason why. So. Continued new business, discussion of ramifications of AB 109.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, Captain Johnson has some update on some statistical information, and I know Commissioner Capel brought forth some information that's been distributed to you in regards to the ongoing discussion we've had related to this, and for the purposes of making a recommendation as how the City of Lancaster would proceed on some issues we have related to this program. So I'll go ahead and, with your permission, turn that over to Captain Johnson at this point.
Chairman, Commissioners. If you remember back in, I believe it was October, November, we had a representative from the Sheriff's Department come up, speak to you on behalf of the AB 109 and our role as the Sheriff's Department and how we're going to deal with the PSPs being released in our community. And back then, some of the projections that you may or may not remember is that they, for county-wide, they kind of estimated that the amount of PSPs that would fall in the LA County Sheriff's jurisdiction was right around 19% of the overall population. Well, here we are several months later, and that projection's actually, we're averaging about 26% of the overall population is being released into our jurisdiction. Out of that, what we're seeing also is that we are staying in line with the initial projections into the Antelope Valley. If you remember back then, it was between 30 to 40 a week they projected would be released out here. We are averaging 40 per week. Lancaster Station has had, as of Monday, 210 PSPs released into the community or living in the community. One of the things that I don't remember if Lieutenant McQuaid had mentioned, but the Sheriff's Department is responsible for the compliance portion of AB 109, and the number one role of the team that out here is to go out and verify residents, and they've been doing that. A few months later, Chief Lopez came up and addressed the Vitalization Commission and told them that because of the amount of individuals out here, they were going to add another team, which they've also done. Last week we did a compliance of 33 locations. We have to date nearly accomplished 100% compliance of all the PSPs in the Antelope Valley. With that, we've arrested about 20 of these individuals. About 10% we're seeing for Lancaster of the PSPs have been rearrested. So it's one of those things that Jim may or may not speak about. Kind of came up in the last meeting, was the correlation between AB 109, the PSP population, and the rise or the trend in property-related crimes. That trend has been consistent with October. Since this program was implemented, we are seeing that increase in property-related crimes, and that because of that, we will continue to do these PSP compliance checks at least once a month out here on a large scale. And then on a daily scale, we're also doing compliance checks of these individuals. We do think it's a population that needs to be monitored very closely, and that's our intention until things are changed at the state level and the management of the whole program. So.
Excuse me, Captain. I'm confused. I've talked to quite a few probation officers out here, and they're telling me that there's over 500 of them in the Antelope Valley now.
Well, I'm speaking specifically at Lancaster. We have 210. Palmdale, as of Monday, has 170. So those are our numbers. We're given those numbers every Monday for PSP population. So collectively, yeah, they're close to 500, but not yet.
Okay. Well, I've been told that there's over 500. And also I've been told by numerous deputies out here that you've attempted to hit 128 locations and only 40 of them were good residences. Are we putting warrants out for the other 88?
Yeah, that's the intent of the compliance team, is to check the address that was given. But in fairness, I mean, it's between, like, as of last week's operation. There were numerous locations that the address was not good. But to be fair to the program, we also found that when we do all probation or parole compliance checks, we used to find the same issue, is that we'd go to do the compliance check, the person no longer lives there, or it's a bad address. But yes, when they do confirm that that is not the address, they put the warrant in the system as a miscounder, and then they go and they try to track them down.
So do you know how many parole or post-release at larges we have right now in the Antelope Valley?
I can get that. I don't have that number with me today, but it's something that's accessible to us.
Okay.
So.
That's all.
Other comments, questions?
Oh, one more question. Out of those 20 that weren't placed in custody, how many actually were revoked?
That I don't believe is very high. That's something I know. I want to say 2, but I can't confirm that. Well, I can confirm it. I just don't have that exact number either. So, okay. And again, that goes back to probation. We arrest them. They're managing the system, so that would be their issue.
Thank you.
I think the other part of this as well has been some of the discussion that's been ongoing here is for the commission has been what, as a community, things that we've identified that are issues related to this program, can we make recommendations or request? Commissioner Capel has provided some information based on a report that was provided to the Board of Supervisors from the Community Criminal Justice Coordination Committee with just some update information that's been presented to you for you to look through. But secondly, Commissioner Capel, if you'd like to present what this Senate bill that's been proposed, I believe identifies some of the issues that we've been discussing that we consider for recommendation, if you would.
Okay, yeah. Last month we discussed about how certain people on parole can actually commit a crime to get off of parole. What we were talking about is how can we stop that, and because it's actually encouraging people to commit crimes to get off of parole. On February 21st, Senator Dutton out of Rancho Cucamonga submitted a SB 1150, which actually addresses pretty much everything we talked about last time, which would put anybody with a serious or non-serious, a serious or violent commitment offense, it would put them back on parole and able not to go on post-release. The only thing that this bill does not address, it still keeps the high-risk sex offenders on, only the high-risk sex offenders would stay on parole. So if you're a low-risk sex offender, which means if you only molested one child, you would be a low risk. So they would still be eligible for the post-release through this bill. But other than that, this bill pretty much clarifies everything that we wanted to rectify through our own recommendations to City Council. So I would recommend that we back SB 1150 as much as possible, and hopefully this goes through because this would save a lot. For example, if somebody was convicted of robbery and then he was convicted of also assault with a deadly weapon, and then later on he's convicted of corporal injury to spouse, that person now is not on parole anymore. Even though he's a very violent person, he's not on parole anymore. He would go to post-release and be eligible to be released from post-release in 6 months' time with very little supervision. So I highly recommend we back SB 1150, and I guess we can bring it up to the City Council and recommend that to them to actually back Senator Dutton's proposal.
Okay. And I appreciate that clarification because I know in looking at some of the backup here, that was exactly my question. Is that as we're going out and making those arrests that you're making with those, I guess, the parolees, were they then falling back on whatever their violation were and now not having parole, or now is it in place, this instrument here?
Right. If like I brought up last month, if a person goes to one of our communities and steals from one of our businesses out here, and he's on parole for, let's say, burglary second, which is that. If he steals from another business, he can go to in custody. He's getting, for burglary second right now, you're getting 180 days. Right. This person was charged with a new felony. He got 19 days. He came back to parole and said, "Hey, I'm off." So now, because he committed a crime, he only did 19 days in custody, and he got off of parole, which was he was on parole for 3 years. So he's on post-release now, he can get off in 6 months.
So again, and that's what this bill addresses, other than the one item that you,
Yeah, exactly. One of the other items that we were saying is if a sex offender, all the sex offenders on parole right now are on a GPS monitoring system, and they're on for a minimum of 3 years, up to 7 years. So if a person right now, if he's a low-risk sex offender, if he goes and commits a crime like petty theft or anything like that, or actually corporal injury to spouse is not serious now. So if he goes and beats up his wife or anything like that, he can actually get off, he can do his time in jail, 6 months, whatever he's going to get off of parole, and go over to probation now, or post-release, and not have any GPS. And that's a benefit for him to get off of parole, is not to be on that dog tag all the time.
okay. Any other questions, comments from commissioners? Well, is this something, Mr. Rico, that we could formulate in a recommendation to bring back for consideration?
Yes.
And then move on? Or?
I can definitely put something together and provide to you that relates to this and identifies the elements of this Senate bill to propose for support
Okay,
from
we
the,
could
from the
bring that
City
back.
Council. Yes, sir.
All
I
right,
can
great.
absolutely do that. Lastly, on this item is Commissioner Smith and I had a conversation as far as some of the discussion we've had is that one of the concerns we have as a community is having a post-release hub here in the Antelope Valley. The nearest hub for post-release for providing information to these post-release participants is what resources are available, what the expectations are, basically the same thing we did on the release of parolees. Right now, it's my understanding that the Department of Probation is seeking out a location, if I got that correct, sir.
I believe it's currently slated for Van Nuys, but we are looking at the services available up here, and it has to be presented to our department, to the probation department, regarding, what we have to offer if it was better suited up here.
Right. Well, I'm hoping that, based on those discussions, just Van Nuys is kind of a long way away, especially based on the numbers that Captain Johnson's talking about for service providers in our community. I know we have some community-based organizations that are interested in presenting, and so I believe part of the ongoing discussion has been location and where they could take space, and I know that's limited as far as county facilities. So we'll just keep pursuing that, and I'll update you as that progresses. Thank you, sir.
I do have a comment on that. It would seem, from all the numbers that I've heard this morning at the Board of Directors meeting of the Sheriff's Booster Club, the numbers I've heard here, that it's with the amount of releasees that we're getting and the percentage being so high that it would be a no-brainer that we would have something up here to support our services. So I'm hoping that whatever we have to do as a group to support this, that it gets done.
I can just tell you that we've been in contact with a lot of the community-based organizations that already work with the Department of Probation as well as parole as it relates to this issue, that are locally based and have a great knowledge of services and job skill training and things that are available here in our community. So they have been collectively working together along with discussions with the county as far as providing that here. Again, I think the big stop point right now is determining where a location base for that hub. Part of the discussion has been at the courthouse adjacent to the probation office. The reality of that is it's probably not real conducive for the environment that needs to be in place for that to be successful. So again, there's been some recommendations as far as other county facilities, like at the old courthouse with some available space in one of the non-utilized courtrooms there. There's some other locations around town that we've been having that discussion. So that is ongoing. So it is alive and well as far as discussion. So that no one's closed the door on that. I think it's just something we need to aggressively pursue and put in place here.
Thank you. Okay, continued new business, item number 2, discussion of ordinance relating to registered sex offenders. And I know I received some information on the regulation of registered sex offenders, and assuming the other commissioners have as well. And I got to say, I appreciate all the background information and research the staff has done, because it's considerable, and I know it takes time. So thank you for that as well from your department, Mr. Dorico.
Just to comment on that, that's been also with the committee members, with Commissioner Fuller, Commissioner Shillette, and Commissioner Capel. We have met down in the city of Ontario, as we reported there, talked to them in discussion. I've had numerous conversations with the county, Riverside County, San Bernardino County, other cities that have implemented a similar regulation as it relates to registered sex offenders. I've just provided you an outline that basically is very similar with some changes on it as it relates to their particular ordinances. But as Commissioner Fuller pointed out, I've left one specific item at the end, kind of open-ended for just purposes of discussion today. And again, just whatever direction the commission would like to move forward on that, to formalize a proposed ordinance to provide to the city council, then I'll take that direction from you.
From commissioners, comments?
If I may, in discussions that I participated in anyway, we looked at the Ontario ordinance as a template, and one of the reasons doing that is that it's been tested through law, through comments and others, and found to be sound. So that was a good place to start. As Mr. Dorico was saying, the majority of what's in that proposal is what's found in Ontario. We actually made it a couple of modifications. There was restrictions such as use of bike paths. What was the other ones? There was conservation areas, and there was a third that we felt was a little bit too restrictive for someone that was seeking activities that weren't related to the children that we removed. And as it's written, as proposed, I certainly would like to support it and pass it forward to the City Council. On purpose, we left out a section of characters, if you will, which is related to preventing a registered sex offender is dressing up as Santa Claus, and or the Easter Bunny, or some character of that nature, which would obviously then attract children to that individual, and perhaps in an inappropriate way. The reason that we left that off is that apparently that has been challenged. We'd like to see that done by the City of Lancaster, and it can be accomplished either through the same ordinance or through licensing of an individual who would like to be a Santa Claus, for example, would then need to be a licensed Santa Claus, which would require some sort of background information, fingerprinting. But we leave that out of the suggestion that we're looking at today, because we are unaware of the legal ramifications of going one way or the other. So as it's written, I would actually like to, I don't know if we want to entertain a motion to take that forward.
I would like to make one comment. The one thing I didn't see on there, and I didn't see it in the Ontario one or the one presented here, was libraries.
Yeah,
a lot of, is it in there?
Libraries are
I
in there.
didn't see that one.
Yeah.
So just a lot of, through the economy, a lot of parents are now utilizing that as a babysitting service, and there was a recent abduction in a library, not locally, but it was. Okay. So that was part of it.
Specifically.
All right.
They're included as well.
One thing that we talked about, too, is the movie theaters. Did you get any information on that?
Yeah, that's also been a challengeable issue. That's been suggested at some of the other public safety people I've spoken to at the counties and various cities. And that's been something as well. That was a challengeable issue. So as they've brought these forward, and in their public comments, and some certain advocacy groups out there, even though they're very limited, have brought that issue forward because that's restrictive and would be challenged. So that's why some of that language was left out.
However, if there was an arcade at the movie theater, they're not allowed to be in the movie theater, correct?
Well, I think that falls in with the jurisdiction of this ordinance and is specified in there. I agree with that. So there is some things, and as Commissioner Fuller pointed out on those other issues we discussed that we've purposely left out there, they're covered in other ways if it needs to be enforced, okay, for some other reason. So there is some language in here that leaves certain things open to interpretation that we could apply if need be.
Did you see where public library was included?
Yeah, it is.
Also, Lee, in G definitions, bicycle trail is still in there. Did we want to take that out? In G under park playground G2, it still says bicycle trail in there. So do we want to take that out? Hiking trails and biking trails.
I think we covered the 4 items that we did remove. That's your recommendation? That was part of that?
Yeah, it was.
Right.
It's not, There was one that was sent out, I think, just
Okay.
recently from the city. And the newer version does not.
Okay, thanks.
What about special events such as the Boulevard?
Those are inclusive in there. When it covers there is discusses events where children would congregate. So we have, that issue is covered there as well. So, and I think that part of that is, in talking to the other community as well as the committee members have spoken to them, is that, that's kind of more generalized because you have certain events that you do throughout the year. As you wouldn't know, our city does lots of events, concerns with that related to like the Poppy Festival or our downtown events, things that inherently would be geared towards children, things and some of our after-school programs or participation in Parks and Rec programs, those type of things would be all covered based on that.
And another thing to bring up too, that what actually started this ordinance that we started was because of the sex offenders on Halloween. So this is covered in this ordinance, which actually says that you can't have any sex offender, any registered sex offender cannot have their lights on between 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 12 a.m. So we were able to put that in, and it's not that has been challenged.
Pardon me?
That has been challenged, correct?
That's correct.
Right.
I mean, again, as these things go forward and it's developing, if we need to amend the ordinance at another date based on it's a living document, we can certainly approach the City Council to make those recommendations. What I can do is I will go back through this again, okay, and I'll provide it to you again for everyone's consensus on that, and then we'll move forward with drafting the ordinance. The city attorney already has all the background information. I've had a discussion with him already on developing an ordinance. Obviously, based on whatever he drafts, I could provide that to you first, and if there's any further comment, and then for the commission to make a presentation to the City Council as it relates to this ordinance.
To reiterate what Lee said a while ago, when we met as a committee, one of the things that we wanted to do was make sure whatever we drafted would not be fought in a court of law, and that we could at least have something that could go forward and not be so specific that it would be challenged. The things that Ontario had already put in were non-challengeable or had been challenged, and they won. And so, like somebody suggested, but some of the things that we just made it in a broader general sense, so that if we had to use that specific, we could. So that's kind of where we headed with that.
Seeing as that we don't actually draft the ordinance, obviously, right, and nor do we approve it that would be done by the City Council, and also recognizing that in April we're going to be dark, we're not going to be meeting because of the election. That would put this in May. I still think we should go forward and make a recommendation that an ordinance be drafted based on this recommendation, because there are our city council members are free thinkers as well, and the lawyers will have their input, so obviously there will be a modified version that goes forward with that, but I would hate to wait another 2 months to make a recommendation that we, I believe, support. So
Would you like to make that motion?
I would like to make the motion then that that we pass this on to the City Council, the regulation of registered sex offenders as drafted by Mr. DeRico with the date of March 13th for the approval or consideration of the City Council.
We have a second on that? Okay, discussion? So we've had it. Hearing none, call for the vote. Okay, thank you very much. I do appreciate the time put in by the commission members and also the staff. It was considerable, so thank you. Okay, commission staff presentations, updates, reports, monthly crime statistics. Jim Cobalt.
Thank you, Chairman Vieira, Commissioners. As we come up here. Here we go. The measurement period for this particular report is February 5th through March 10th, 5 weeks. As we look at the data with regard to violent crimes, property crimes, and total Part 1 crimes, the interesting thing when I look at these data is that the violent crimes are staying relatively consistent with where they've been in the past. Where we're seeing any kind of movement at all is in the property crimes, and this will be revealed also when we get to the point where we start looking at what's trending up and trending down. And what's significant about that is that's where we really need the public's help. The public is the one who can really help us in this. If they secure their property, that's still one of the biggest issues that we have, is the public not locking their cars when they get out of it, leaving garage doors open and things like that. If we could get the public's cooperation on that, these property crime numbers would come down correspondingly. So that's where we're really asking for the support of the public. As we take a look at arrests, they're fairly consistent with what we see from week to week with what we've seen in the past. We did have a little bit of an uptick in original report numbers back in the middle of this in week number 8. We had 532 original reports, and that's a pretty good indicator to us of things that are going on at the Lancaster station in terms of they're taking a lot of reports, a lot of original report numbers are being issued, and those kinds of things. That doesn't necessarily reflect in Part 1 crimes. That's just there's a lot of activity going on over there. As we take a look at Part 1 weekly crime events and we measure them this reporting period to last reporting period, we're pretty much where we were the last time. We've got an average of 71.4 this time. We had an average of 71 last time. Our weekly median was 68 last time. It's about 70 this time. So we're in a fairly good area of where we want to be. As we take a look at reporting districts, 1127 and 1137 hit the top of the charts again with 44, followed by 1126, 1135, 1132, and 1133. Give you a quick observation of what that looks like on the map. It's 1127, and 1127 is bounded by 10th Street West over to about 60th Street West, from I down to roughly K. Again, a lot of the primary activity is occurring over on Valley Central Way. Again, folks locking their cars would really help us. You can take a look there in the stuff along Valley Central Way and see a lot of it is larcenies, and if we dug into those larcenies, they would be auto larcenies. The other thing about this is it means, some of the upside of this means folks are out shopping again and they're visiting these commercial establishments and those kinds of things. Sometimes that makes for a little bit of an easier target, but when we see this particularly around some of these commercial areas, that particularly when we haven't seen it in this volume, it could suggest to us that there's a lot more activity going on around those areas too. So economically for the city, that could be not necessarily a real negative thing. It's 1137. Actually, on both sides of that middle divider there, you can see a lot of the activity again up around Avenue J. We've identified that in the past as an area of interest to us, and it continues to be. Part of the reason for that is the dense population up there and the commercial areas as well. Here's 1126. 1126 is a lot of the activity around there is centered around K and 10th Street West. We've talked at previous meetings about the issues related to the apartments from Gadsden over to roughly 20th Street West, south of K, and they continue to have a lot of activity that kind of links them. If you look at the density bubble that goes from from roughly 10th Street West and K. It almost extends over to the other apartment complex over here. That's sometimes spatially, you look at that and say, well, there's probably a relationship there. You've got people going back and forth and committing crimes along the way. This is 1135. Again, a lot of 1135. The activity is within, in fact, you can see the centralization down here. These little graphical areas down here are apartments and multifamily dwellings, and you can see a lot of the activity is centered around there as well. So 1132, you can see a lot of the activity again is down around Avenue J, from Sierra Highway over to about Challenger Way. And 1133, you can see a lot of the activity there as well as along the line down here around Avenue K, and you can see it around the apartment complexes over here just a little bit east of Challenger Way. So we take a look at residential burglaries. 1127 was at the top this time with 11, followed by 1137. With 10, and then we drop down to 8 in 1132 and 1133, and 7 in 1123 and 1192. Vehicle larcenies, 1132 and 1137 had 8, 1126 had 7, and 1127 had 6. Now here's where we can take a look at the trends, and we can see a little bit more of a visual example of what we were talking about before when we start looking at the crimes against property versus the crimes against persons. The one property that, or the one property crime that shows a fairly consistent upward trend is residential burglary. You can see, now again, as we look at this, we're looking 52 weeks back, with the most current week being on the right side of the graph and the most distant being on the left side of the graph. So we're looking at a progression from left to right. The green line here is the trend line. It's a linear frequency to show us within the scope of the data whether we're trending up or down. The blue line here that's just slightly above 24 is our baseline. We have about 24.13 burglaries in Lancaster every week. That's our average, and that goes back years and years and years. Luckily, as you can see from the graph here, we've been well below that baseline for the majority of this year. But as we take a look at it, that's probably one of the more pronounced upticks that we have. As we take a look at larceny, I included this in trending up, although it almost appears that it's trending flat. Excuse me. Our baseline for larceny, we average about 40.86 larcenies per week in Lancaster, and we're usually below that. Now, it's kind of interesting. For a presentation that we did last year, one of the things that I looked at was, who are we arresting with regard to these crimes? With the burglaries, we were predominantly arresting males that had a median age of about 22 years of age. For the larcenies, we were arresting males, or the majority were males with a median age of about 27. And sometimes that's kind of an inversion of what you would think. You would think that the kids would start out stealing first and then maybe progress to burglary. But the data, when we look at the people who are arrested, sometimes don't really bear that out. It almost seems like the younger folks are doing the burglaries, and then with the larcenies, when we catch them, they're a little bit older. Grand theft auto, again, is another one of those things that we kind of looked at, and it almost appears to be trending flat, which is a good thing for us. Our baseline with this is 13.49, and you can see our trend line is hovering right around 8. So we're doing really well with auto theft as well. When we get to robbery, we are definitely trending flat there. We average about 6 robberies a week in Lancaster, and while we've been hovering, or we had times during the course of this year, or the past 52 weeks, where we broke above the 6 robberies. One of the great things to happen was the Sheriff's Department stepped up and created a team to address this. And you can see right here where we were breaking high, and then once they implemented the team that began to look into this, you can see we started to drop fairly steadily below the blue line, which is our baseline. We had a couple of weeks where we broke above it, but overall we managed to stay below the baseline for us. One of the crimes showing a slight downward trend was arson, but again, that's such a low frequency crime for us that 1 or 2 can just skew your results real fast. Same thing with the offense of rape. We can see a downward trend in that regard as well. But again, rape for us is a very low frequency crime. Our baseline is 1.09 per week. So as you take a look at these numbers, it's still showing a very clear downward trend. And then one of the other things when I went back and talked about the violent crimes when we were looking at the raw numbers, this is assault, and you can see a really distinct downward trend with regard to assault. So as we take a look at what's going on in our numbers, if citizens would help us by securing their property and not leaving things lying around that somebody else could come along and pick up, I mean, that won't stop all crime, but that would really help bring some of these numbers down. And then again, this presentation is available on the city's public safety webpage, and it's available for any of you or any member of the public to go and download. This is our crime density map for the 6 weeks since the last reporting period. You can see we had 357 Part 1 crimes and that geocoded to the city of Lancaster. And the colors for the reporting districts there show whether they had 0 Part 1s up through 26 or more Part 1s. This is the spatial trend analysis that shows us exactly what pockets of the city crime went up in and what pockets of the city crime went down in relative to the previous 5 weeks. This is our forecast for Lancaster for the month of March, and this was provided to the Sheriff's Department last week. And essentially this shows us what reporting districts were anticipating higher volumes of activity and which ones were anticipating lower volumes of activity over the course of the reporting period. And this is a 52-week look back at our calls for service that are geocoded to the city of Lancaster. We run generally somewhere between 600 and 800 calls for service per week. And right now, that green linear line there is showing that we're pretty flat. In other words, things are pretty consistent throughout the year with regard to this. We've got our peak times and our valley times that kind of offset each other. And these are the locations during this reporting period that had 10 or more calls for service. Obviously, at the top of the list again is Antelope Valley Hospital, and as we've discussed in the past, there's not much we can do about that because when something walks through the front doors of the emergency room, there are certain things that they are mandated to call the Sheriff's Department on. Then one that kind of raised up in frequency for us is the Shadow Park Motel that had 27 calls. Then the Sheriff's Department factored in there, and of course they get in there because sometimes when somebody comes in to make a report, they have to call a deputy in out of the field to actually take that report. Then we have Windrose Apartments, Friendly Village Mobile Home Park, Briarwood Mobile Home Park. Most of these have been on the list before, so the only new one to pop on here that I haven't seen in quite a while is the Lancaster Estates Mobile Home Park, which had 10. That pretty much takes care of the presentation. Questions?
Questions, comments? No? I have a question, Jim, and I'm sorry if this is something that was discussed last week, but when we look at the crimes here and we look at that with AB 109, is there any way to do a comparative analysis with regards to anything that may be attributable to that?
What we've done to this point, and again, I want to emphasize the things that we do that no other city does. We keep a database on all of the people arrested at the station, and we correlate each person against to find out whether or not they have a prior criminal record, whether or not they're on probation, and whether or not they're on parole. We know consistently 10% of all of our arrests are parolees. We know that all across the board. Now, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm digging a little bit deeper now, and we're going to look at some of the different classifications of the parolees. But one of the first things that I have to do is I have to get the data all downloaded and sorted. Then I have to get addresses affixed to it and those kinds of things. But it contained within that data is the classification for that, and that does include the folks that are on non-revocable parole. So one of the things that we'll be able to do is we'll be able to see the impact of those folks. Again, I think it's something that we absolutely have to monitor. I just don't know that we'll find in the end if it's driving our Part 1 crime rate.
Thank you. Okay, arrest statistics, LA County Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Vieira. Good morning, Commissioners. One of the things that we're doing to address this rise in property crimes is we have several operations that are pre-planned, large scale, through the support of the City of Lancaster for our special teams, and then also with our partnership through AVCFI, like the PSP operation last week. So we'll be doing one of those this week as a kickoff for the targeting the property crimes. But one thing I'd like to mention is I don't believe we've talked about this yet. The core team began in April of last year targeting graffiti vandalism. And starting off this year, we're down 44% in January and 38% for the incidence of graffiti. So we've had some great success with that, along with the community outreach that they'll be doing. They're going to be continuing to monitor and investigate graffiti crimes. And of interest, last month you may have read about the drug sales and receiving stolen property associated possibly with a resident behind a local pawn shop. The investigators went and did a follow-up warrant on a storage facility associated with that, recovered over $100,000 worth of additional drugs, which included several $1,000s, a half pound of meth, 10 pounds of high-grade marijuana, and an ounce of heroin. And with that, I can't see her over there, but I'd like to introduce Sergeant Teresa Dawson. She's another part of our outreach to the community. She's our community relations sergeant, and she's going to talk about some of the things we'll be doing in that aspect.
Hi, Chairman Vieira, members of the Commission. My name is Sergeant Dawson, and I am with the Community Relations Crime Prevention Unit at Lancaster Station. And some of the things that we're doing this year, and ongoing, we want to form better relations with the community, and in ways that we're trying to do that are we're going to be having an open house later this year, probably around June. We'd like to invite members of the community to come into the station, make them feel more comfortable, give them the opportunity to get an inside look into the sheriff's station and the programs that we offer. We're going to be having an ongoing monthly program, Coffee with the Deputy. We had our first program at the Lemon Leaf this last month on March 8th. It was not well attended, however, but I think as the word gets out, more members will be attending. At the end of each quarter, the captain will be bringing the crime trends and stats so that the community can kind of get a bigger idea of how things are going with the city. We've learned in talking with people through neighborhood watches that a lot of people are intimidated to come inside the sheriff's station. One of the things that Diane was saying is that coming into the sheriff's station can be overwhelming. It can be quite intimidating for people. The Coffee with the Deputy allows them to come into an environment where it's comfortable. It's a coffee shop. They can bring their concerns from their neighborhood. They can talk to us about the nuisance problems that sometimes people think are silly, but they're huge problems to them. And this allows them that forum to express their concerns to us. It also allowed us to bring them information regarding the programs and the services that the city through the Public Safety Office offers, as well as the online reporting, police reporting, which will, I think, once we get the word out, there's a lot of reports that can be taken online, and that they don't have to wait for a deputy to come to their house. They can go right to the City of Lancaster's website. The city's been fantastic in reorganizing their website to where as soon as you log on to the City of Lancaster's website, right at the very top, there's an icon. You can click on it, online police reporting. Once the community members get familiar with it, it's going to lower our response times because we're going to be able to redirect our resources to priority and emergency response calls instead of going out to those calls where there's no suspect information, there's no evidence to collect, and the community will be able to do that instantaneously online. We've been doing, excuse me, city town hall meetings. We've conducted 2 at the end of last year. A lot of our population out here is transitory, or they don't have vehicles, so we're waiting until it gets a little bit warmer to conduct the next few ones. We plan on doing 2 additional ones. We conducted one in the Lincoln Elementary School, and the other one was in the Mariposa School. We intend to do another one in the Cole Middle School, and we're looking at another school area. But knowing that our community is probably going to be walking to this, we'll probably wait till the weather's a little bit warmer to do that. Again, we want the community to be able to come to us and bring their concerns, get information on the things that we addressed. Like Jim Cobalt was saying, locking up their property, getting information on keeping their residents safe, maybe identity theft, gang information. I did a presentation last week at a church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. 130 members attended, and it was very informative for me. And you would think that they would be getting all the information. But hearing their concerns as community members, hearing the things that they were concerned about, gives us a better idea of the services and the needs of the community and better ways that we can address it as a department. We're excited to be expanding our clergy council, so we're going to be seeking to go out into the community and get more people from our clergy to address the department. How that benefits us is when we go out to crimes, sometimes we get victims of very violent crime. They may or may not be a member of a church or have access to that. The clergy council helps us in both ways, both as ministering to our men and women in our department, but also as an advisory to the community. And we can call them and we can have somebody come out that's maybe a member of their faith or somebody that can bring healing to them at that time. So we'd like to expand that to include more variety and to the community. We'd like to bring back the community program at Operation ERIC, educational role models in the community. This was a program that was developed in about 1998, and it was named after a little boy, Eric. Eric was a young man who came from a broken home. He had several members of his family who were on probation, parole, arrested, in prison. And at the time, it was Steve Harbison, Fred Hill, Chris Keeling, myself. There was about 6 of us. And what we looked to identify with is that these young children do not have that that center of guidance and somebody that's mentoring them and guiding them. And so we went to the schools and we were looking for direction from the teachers to tell us, can you tell us the kids who are most likely to end up in gangs and end up with drug problems based on their home life, but who you see have the potential that if given the opportunity could get out of that. So we had an essay contest, and from there the teachers helped us pick kids, and we took the kids on field trips and we monitored them and we kind of encouraged them and followed up with them. So we'd like to bring that program back. We have rape aggression defense classes at the station through the Sexual Assault Response Service, and myself, we teach the classes for free to the community. We do not charge for them. And those classes will be probably starting again about June, because right now the room is being used for other programs that are going on in the department. The top core team, the LANCAP, the Community Relations Unit, as well as other volunteers at our department are going to be joining the Unite program with the city. So we are going to be participating in that, and we're going to be doing the redevelopment or revitalization in the El Dorado neighborhood. The LANCAP, the core top team, as well as community relations, are also involved with the Weed and Seed. And so we've been working with Janie Hodge and the Paving the Way Foundation. There's going to be a fundraiser on March 24th at Heroes Park. So if you're not doing anything that day, that's a great opportunity to come out and support that. I joined the Chambers of Commerce for Lancaster, as well as the Quartz Hill. That has been a wonderful avenue to get information from our business owners, finding out from the business owners what is affecting them as far as a law enforcement aspect, the things, the challenges that they're facing, theft, counterfeit money, bad checks, and things in such that nature. Again, it's an avenue for them to let the Sheriff's Department know how we can help them. Working with the Lancaster City of Lancaster's Public Safety Office has been amazing. And through our partnership, I think that we're going to get a lot of great programs going to help both with the Neighborhood Watch and the Business Watch. You have any questions?
I would like to compliment her and the department on trying to, with all these programs, trying to make especially the young people realize that the Sheriff's Department and law enforcement are not the enemy. They are actually our friends. But I would not worry too much about people not wanting to come to the Sheriff's Station, because that's kind of associated with if you're there for wrong reasons. So
sure.
But I do appreciate all the things that you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, California Highway Patrol update.
Good morning.
Morning.
Reporting for February this year, our officers initiated over 2,500 enforcement contacts and issued over 1,800 citations for moving violations. Unfortunately, we investigated 2 fatal collisions in February, both of which involved speed, and no obvious signs of DUI, pending toxicology reports. But speed was the main factor so far. We arrested 46 motorists for DUI last month, which is an increase of 64% compared to February 2011. Excuse me, our DUI arrests for the year are up 42%. Our accidents year to date where DUI is a primary collision factor are down 9%. So we're pleased to report those statistics. Total accidents are down 13% in February and 15% year to date. Seatbelt citations are down 20%, probably due to voluntary compliance is on the increase. Every quarter we run surveys, and our compliance observations have been 98, 99%, very high. Nevertheless, we issued 44 citations for seatbelt violations and 16 for child restraint. Now, this Saturday, as you know, is St. Patrick's Day, so of course, accordingly, we're going to be aggressively enforcing DUI laws. Our officers are going to be out there targeting the motorists who might be impaired. We'll also be deploying additional units and that comes through an OTS grant. The national campaign, Buzz Driving is Drunk Driving, led by California OTS and also NHTSA. And Sheriff's Department, of course, and police and CHP all have a zero tolerance for DUI, and that's what we'll be focusing on. Last year during St. Paddy's Day in California, we unfortunately experienced 3 deaths and 96 serious injuries, of which involving alcohol-impaired motorists. So it is serious, and it's a tragedy. So we just encourage people, plan before you go out partying. You know, either have a taxi or limo service set up or designated driver. And some people forget about these party buses. When you get back, somebody still has to drive home. So even on these party buses, please have a designated driver for each group. And remember 911. Please use that for emergencies. I have not heard so much an abuse of that lately. As you know, historically, we get calls that are not emergency related. But please call in any suspect. Sometimes they come across, our officers will stop 911 call-outs, BOLs, and it turns out the driver was just sleepy. That's fine. They could have crashed as well. If they're weaving that badly because they're tired, then we woke them up. They can get off the freeway, get some coffee, or make other arrangements. And finally, if you're hosting a party, remember you can be liable for any injuries that come out of that. If somebody leaves your party drunk and you knew it, be responsible. We encourage people to take the keys at the beginning of the party and give them out as appropriate when it's time. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Thank you very much. Okay, District Attorney update. Stephen Franklin, Deputy District Attorney.
Just briefly, complaints that were issued in February for Antelope Valley. Obviously, that's Palmdale and the rest, not just Lancaster. But it was 274, which is interesting because we had been tracking, in our actual region, we generally have the highest complaints issued, but San Fernando had more, LAX has more, and Van Nuys has the same at 272. So hopefully that's a trend where we're actually going down a little bit as opposed to them coming up. For misdemeanors, we filed a total of 663 today through February, year to date. That's 1280. Felonies, by the way, year to date is 579. And I would just, it struck me, just one other point I wanted to address was when Lieutenant was talking about all the contraband that was found in that particular shed that they located. That's very impressive. That's a lot of narcotics. But absent weapons, and I say this rhetorically, basically, but absent weapons or the defendants having a strike under AB 109, that's a local custody time offense. So you can have that kind of narcotics and not go to state prison. You would get a state prison commitment, but you'd be doing it in local time. So I guess hopefully the Senate bill that you would, Commissioner Capel, you were talking about earlier, maybe hopefully that addresses that type of issue. If not, maybe we could sit down and talk and maybe come up with excluding some of these other offenses where that they are also state prison time.
When you say local time, what?
Oh, by local time, I'm sorry. That would be done in local county jail.
Which a duration of time, or is it?
Well, that's, you know, we jokingly, and no offense to LT or to Lieutenant, but we jokingly refer to it as BACA time. It's you know, you could do anywhere from 10 to 20%. You know, it's substantially less, however, than what you would do in state prison.
Thank you. Business Watch Subcommittee update, Mr. Dorico.
If you don't mind, Chairman Vieira, I'm going to include these things. What I'd like to do is just invite the commission to area meeting we're having at Lancaster High School on the 29th at 6 p.m. I'll make sure it's on everyone's calendar and it's on our public safety calendar. And as this goes out, especially for our new members, we update that calendar regularly through the administration office, so you can know that events are coming up. So that is going to be a general neighborhood watch meeting. Normally, when we have an area meeting, we have 4 areas of the city that we concentrate on and work with the Corps deputy and the community relations department from the station and have these meetings, and they're more oriented towards the block captains and not a general meeting. What we're doing now is we're really going out and recruiting neighborhood watch groups where we have gaps between groups out there. So we're aggressively going to invite the public out there, give them a general idea of what neighborhood watch is about. I'll provide you also with an agenda. If you're interested in attending, please notify me so I can introduce you at the meeting. It's a good opportunity there to have some questions that we usually get from the general public as it relates to what our function is here.
Is that the 29th of this month?
Yes, sir. 29th, 6 p.m. And thank you, Chairman Vieira, for so graciously allowing us to use the high schools for these meetings, because we usually get a good group of folks there. And we do some different presentations and just talk about the basics of Neighborhood Watch. And then what we're doing now every other month is we're inviting our block captains here for different presentations that we're coordinating with different resources that are out there for information for them. Also, the Poppy Festival's coming up next month. We'll make sure we get that on your calendar as well. I'm sure most of you are aware of it. We set up a pretty significant public safety area. We have some different things that we do in that area during the day. If there's an opportunity for you to come and kind of meet and greet folks there, because we get a lot of folks in our area. The Sheriff's Department, the Highway Patrol, the Fire Department, all the different agencies that are represented through public safety usually have a presence there. We set up several tents, and it's a really good experience. Lastly, I'd like to ask that I would like to do a public safety presentation for our next meeting of all the things that we're involved in, to give you an update on all what we're touching out there as far as a department here at the City of Lancaster and how we're networking with agencies and other community organizations out there and all the things that we've got going. I'd like to put it in more of a presentation format for you, just to bring you up to speed on where we're at, especially for our new members of the commission, and then the direction of what our goals and objectives are for the rest of this year.
Look forward to that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I have a question. It might be for Lee, but it might go back to Jim. Hearing and reading about all these school break-ins and vandalism recently, and some schools being hit back-to-back, what do we know about that, or what do we, is there something that is going on that can, obviously this sets education, and that's kind of close to my heart, but it sets education of our students back when, copiers and things like that are destroyed in the classroom and stuff.
Well, I think the thing is for us is, we have a trend. I don't know if we've been able to establish that there's some relationship between the different incidents. I will tell you that one of the things that Marlene Navarro works on, and we're working very closely with the district attorney's office, and more so with the juvenile court right now, because we have some issues as it relates to the juvenile court and restitution recovery and aggressively prosecuting folks that participate in this type of activity. We always get into that discussion, delinquency versus criminality, especially with juveniles, and it's always a difficult issue. I think the thing is we should focus on the parental responsibility aspect of it. The schools need to be made whole, especially in these trying times in finances. It's devastating to the schools, and I think it's something that as these occur, we need to be aggressive about prosecution, we need to be aggressive about restitution, and we need to make that public, that we're going to aggressively push those issues forward as a priority. We've been very successful with that as it relates to graffiti vandalism, with the Sheriff's Department's efforts, with the core team, with the aggressive filing, especially in the adult court of Mr. Franklin's office, and some cooperation from our judiciary there that have been handing out some pretty significant penalties as it relates to these issues. We should follow suit with that as well with these type of issues.
Thank you. Public business from the floor, non-agendized items, and nothing there, Britt, today, or?
No speaker cards.
Okay. Commissioner comments? Any comments? Okay. Pardon? Okay, hearing none, our next meeting again won't be until the 9th of May, 10 a.m. We're dark the month of April, so have a safe and enjoyable spring break or Easter, and thank you for being here.